4. Deanna Laney and her sons, Texas, 2003. The discovery of the crime. On May 10, 2003, law enforcement in East Texas responded to a chilling 911 call from a rural home in Smith County. When deputies arrived at the scene, they discovered a horrific sight in the backyard. 2 young boys, Joshua, aged 8, and Luke, aged 6, were found bludgeoned to death with rocks. Inside the house, a 3rd child, 14-month-old Aaron, was found severely injured but alive. All 3 were the children of Deanna Laney, a devout Christian and stay-at-home mother. Laney herself had placed an emergency call, calmly stating that she had killed her sons. She led officers to the scene, speaking in a calm and disconnected manner. Deputies immediately took her into custody. The community was shocked by the brutality of the act, particularly given Laney's image as a religious, devoted parent. The children's father, Keith Laney, had been away at the time of the killings. Medical assistance was quickly summoned for Aaron, who was airlifted to a hospital. He survived the attack, but was left permanently disabled. This section details the discovery of the crime, the scene's condition, and the immediate response by law enforcement and emergency services. It provides the initial foundation for understanding the timeline of the tragic events that unfolded that night. Background of Deanna Laney. Deanna Laney was a 38-year-old housewife living in New Chapel Hill, Texas. She was known in her community as a kind and faithful Christian. Laney regularly attended church and participated in local women's Bible study groups. There were no reports of previous domestic disturbances or complaints filed against her. Family and friends describe her as loving and attentive to her children. Prior to the incident, she had no criminal record or documented mental illness. However, some close acquaintances later testified that Laney had become increasingly focused on religious visions. She claimed to be hearing messages from God and believed she was being tested spiritually. She expressed concerns that her children were being led astray and that she was responsible for their salvation. No one around her anticipated the violence that would follow. This section explores Laney's religious background, family dynamics, and the absence of prior red flags. It also introduces the growing influence of her delusional beliefs in the weeks before the crime. These insights help frame how her mental health deteriorated under the guise of spiritual conviction. 3 mental health evaluation and religious delusions. After her arrest, Deanna Laney was evaluated by multiple forensic psychologists to determine her mental competency. Medical experts concluded that she was suffering from a psychotic disorder characterized by religious delusions. She believed she was receiving direct communication from God, who instructed her to kill her sons as a test of faith. Laney compared herself to biblical figures like Abraham, who was asked to sacrifice his son. Psychiatrists diagnosed her with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder with severe psychotic features. She reportedly believed that by killing her children, she was obeying a divine command to protect them from evil. She showed no signs of remorse during early evaluations, only a steadfast belief that she had acted in obedience. Her mental state deteriorated further while in custody, confirming the depth of her psychological condition. This section describes her diagnosis, symptoms, and the nature of her delusions. It draws only from verified court documents and expert testimony. The section avoids dramatization and provides clear clinical context for her behavior before and after the crime. Legal proceedings and the insanity defense. Deanna Laney was charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of attempted capital murder. Her legal team entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Under Texas law, a successful insanity defense must prove a defendant could not distinguish right from wrong at the time of the crime. Prosecutors did not dispute that Laney had killed her sons, but challenged the extent of her psychosis. They brought their own experts to argue she had some awareness of her actions. However, during the trial, overwhelming psychiatric testimony supported the defense. Laney's statements and behavior were consistently detached from reality. Witnesses describe her deepening religious delusions and irrational interpretations of Scripture. The judge, rather than a jury, ultimately decided the verdict. He ruled that Laney was legally insane and thus not criminally responsible for murders. This section explains the legal standard for insanity in Texas, the evidence presented, and the legal rationale for the court's decision. It does not include speculative commentary, remaining focused on trial facts and judicial process, sentencing, and psychiatric commitment. Following the court's ruling, Deanna Laney was committed to a maximum security state psychiatric hospital in Texas. The commitment was indefinite, meaning she would remain under care until deemed no longer a threat to herself or others. She was placed in a highly monitored forensic unit with specialized psychiatric staff. Treatment included medication for psychosis, therapy, and regular evaluations. Texas law allows annual reviews of her condition by mental health boards. Despite the severity of her crime, Laney's sentencing focused entirely on treatment and not punishment. The judge stated that she remained gravely mentally ill and required continuous care. There was no fixed release date, and any petition for discharge would undergo strict scrutiny. As of the latest reports, Laney remains hospitalized and continues to receive psychiatric treatment. This section outlines the structure of her confinement, legal basis for indefinite hospitalization, and the medical framework of her treatment plan. It does not editorialize or interpret her recovery, focusing solely on factual reporting, community reaction, and religious debate. The Laney case deeply affected the East Texas community and sparked a national debate. Many locals struggled to reconcile the brutal killings with Laney's reputation as a devout Christian mother. Her case was widely reported in both secular and religious media outlets. Faith leaders issued public statements about the importance of discernment in religious practice. Some fundamentalist groups distanced themselves from Laney, emphasizing that her actions were driven by illness, not true faith. Mental health advocates used the case to highlight the dangers of untreated psychosis masked as spiritual conviction. The case also drew comparisons to other religiously motivated crimes involving mothers. This section reviews documented public responses, commentary from church leaders, and mental health professionals. It remains factual and avoids sensational language, focusing instead on the intersection of faith, mental illness, and public perception, broader implications, and mental health policy. Deanna Laney's case remains a significant example in discussions of religious delusion and legal insanity. It is often cited in academic and legal texts on maternal filicide and the limits of criminal responsibility. Psychiatrists studying the case emphasize the need for early identification of religious psychosis. The Texas Department of Health and other agencies reviewed protocols for recognizing extreme religious behavior linked to mental illness. The case also spurred training for clergy to spot signs of psychological distress masked as spiritual messages. Legal scholars debated whether insanity defenses should include religious motivations more explicitly. The case continues to be referenced in media and education as an example of how belief systems can intersect with untreated psychosis. This final section reviews the confirmed policy and educational outcomes following the case. It reinforces the need for cooperation between religious communities, mental health providers, and legal authorities. It concludes a report without speculation or moral judgment.